Hi, this is Morgan Jurimus with RT Book Reviews, and I'm sitting here today with Julia London. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. We are at the New Jersey Romance Writers Conference, a really fun one. Local chapter of New York and New Jersey and a bunch of other people kind of get together and they put on the show, and you're here.
Yeah.
You're speaking and you're also doing the book signing. Do you really enjoy coming to conferences, talking to your readers and other writers?
Oh yeah, I love, of course I have a lot of friends that are writers. I love meeting readers, because I'm usually sitting in an office by myself and I have no idea how people receive my work, so you come to a conference and you hear, what people think about your books, and you find out you really do have a lot of fans out there. So that's, there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, speaking of your books, the series right now that you're working on that everyone falls in love with is The Secrets of Hadley Green. And when you say secrets, it should be in all capital letters, because there is a lot of scandalous stuff happening in these books.
Yeah.
So far, we're going into the fourth book now. So far in the series, what would you say is maybe the biggest secret or scandal that has been uncovered so far?
Oh my goodness. I think probably in the second book we find out who the actual heir to Ashwood is, or who it's not, I should say. I guess we don't really find out who it is until the third book, but people that you thought were heirs may not be heirs, and people who you thought were, lords may not be lords. So that's been a lot of fun. That part's been a lot of fun.
But of course, just because the heir makes his presence known doesn't mean that all of the secrets and all of the intrigue is over at all.
No.
In fact, in your next book coming up in February, The Last Debutant, I feel so bad for your heroine. She feels like she's kind of in her biological clock is ticking, I guess you can say. And although in historical times they didn't call them biological clocks, I guess it would be, she's afraid of being put on the shelf.
That's right.
And so she's really wanting to get married. She's really wanting to start her family, and it's just not happening. So what else to do but travel to Scotland?
Yeah, yeah, right. Well, originally there were only going to be 3 books in this series, but there were a couple of things that I, thought weren't cleared up that I wanted to clear up, so there became this 4th book. But Daria Babcock has appeared in the previous 3 books, and she's a socialite, and she's at all the functions. But when the 4th book starts out, her friends are all married, they're all having babies. She talks about how she's surrounded by babies all the time, and that's what she wants for herself. Yeah. And she's done everything she's supposed to do, but she hasn't received a viable offer. And so in a moment of frustration, something happens in her family that would take somebody to Scotland. She's like, I'm out of here. I'm not going to sit around and watch people pushing their babies around in prams all day. I'm going to Scotland, and that's what sets her off on her adventure.
And once in Scotland, she finds she's visiting family, and one of her family members, again the scandals and secrets, one of her family members, it turns out, has taken a rather large sum of money from somebody you probably shouldn't, and there is a gunfight and somebody is hurt, and that's how the hero comes into the picture. And he's not necessarily he's not seeing babies everywhere around. His biological clock isn't necessarily ticking.
No. In fact, when she arrives in Scotland, she goes to see her grandmother, and her grandmother does not live in a manor house as she would expect. She lives in a small cottage, and she's not even there. And when Daria walks into the cottage, she's not sure she's in the right place, but she sees familiar things, and she heads to the back and finds a naked man in her grandmother's bed. Who's
a naked young man.
Yeah, naked, and she's like, what's going on? And so and she discovers a lot of things about her grandmother. This woman is not the same woman she knew in England, and then this man also doesn't claim to have any knowledge of himself, and she's in Scotland for the first time on her own and doesn't know what she's doing, but she perseveres. She's a feisty one.
Absolutely, and I think that's something that she has in common with a lot of your heroines, is these are not shy young misses sipping tea at all. They get out there, they kind of take charge of their own lives, and I really like that. Even in a historical setting, you make it very realistic, and you make the heroine somebody that we want to know.
Yeah, well, thank you. I try to make them somebody I want to know, and even though we all have these perceptions in our mind about what Regency heroines were like, I mean, they were women, like we were all women, young women, and they had the same kind of desires and wants, and I want to portray that as much as I can, but keeping in that setting as much as I can. So they do things that probably Regency misses didn't do, like go off to Scotland by themselves, but it's fun.
Well, so in February of 2013, we are going to be getting The Last Debutant, but that's not the only thing happening next year.
No.
You've got a super exciting project, and it's a contemporary project you're working on. It's a trilogy with three sisters.
Three sisters. Yes. Three sisters who don't know each other exist. Basically, they had a father. Well, let me tell you what I really wanted to do was kind of capture the sort of families a lot of us have in America now, where they come from different mothers and fathers, and you have step siblings. And so what I had was a man who was probably not the best father. He's not going to get any Father of the Year awards, and he fathered three children by three different women. A couple of them know about each other, but they didn't know about the third, and the third didn't know about the other two at all. And when he dies, his property is theirs to split. So it's the first time they're finding out about each other, and then of course they have to decide what they're going to do with each other and this property. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's I mean, it's making me think through things that I never really thought about, like what would that be like to be a grown woman and discover that you have two sisters out there.
Right.
And like the first one I'm writing about, she was an only child, and she always wanted a sibling until she got one. She's not so sure she wanted one, like all of us, right?
The grass is always greener.
The grass is always greener.
But it seems it's really interesting that you go from historical to contemporary, and you're able to make that switch and write such great books, because you have written contemporary stories before as well as historicals. And when you find yourself switching between the two, do you kind of have to like wipe your mind a little bit of like the language and stuff and start over again, or is it an easy switch for you?
It's interesting. People ask me that a lot, and I do have to make kind of that language switch, because if you think about it, historicals, the language is a little bit slower, not as many contractions, and in contemporary writing is a lot quicker.
Yeah.
So there's the technical part of it, but really the story part of it is not that different. And I think people think that it is, but it's not. Men and women have been the same forever, and the romantic arc is pretty much the same. The background is obviously different, and surprisingly enough, I have a harder time getting the facts straight on the contemporary side than I do the historical, because not everybody knows what I know about the Regency period, and so if I slip something in there that maybe wasn't completely historically accurate, most people aren't going to know. But if I slip something in a contemporary that's not accurate, everybody knows, and they call you on it. So it's a little bit harder, Yeah, but it's as far as the characters go and the character development, it's pretty much the same. People are people.
Well, if you want to read about Julia's people, then you can check out her February novel, which is The Last Debutant, and then there's three other The Secrets of Hadley Green series out now. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you so much.